In today's video, I'm going to show you how to quickly provision an Amazon SageMaker Studio environment using both the Quick Start and Standard setup. By the end of this video, you will have your SageMaker Studio up and running, ready for machine learning projects. Let's get started. Before we get into the demo, let's briefly talk about what SageMaker Studio is. Amazon SageMaker Studio is a data science integrated development environment, or for short, IDE. It is the primary interface for accessing SageMaker features such as data preparation, model training, and model deployment. What makes it powerful is that it simplifies and optimizes all steps of ML development by providing a single user interface to work and collaborate while abstracting away the underlying infrastructure. Now let's get back to the demo and start the provisioning process. First, log into your AWS account and navigate to SageMaker service. And in the SageMaker dashboard, click on Studio and click on Create SageMaker Domain. A SageMaker domain represents a collection of user profiles, each configured with specific settings like the IAM role for running Jupyter notebooks, tags, and permission for SageMaker access. In an enterprise environment, each domain can represent, let's say, a department, team, or business unit. For example, let's assume that there are 3 domains within a particular data science department. You can have Domain 1 representing the product development, Domain 2 representing the marketing analytics, and Domain 3 representing the research and development team. Each domain has its own users, resources, and security configurations, allowing teams to work independently with isolated data and resources, while ensuring the organization's infrastructure remains organized and secured. Now, let's create a SageMaker Studio domain using the Quick Start setup. This is the fastest way to get started if you don't need custom configurations. Before you start, ensure you are using the same region where your S3 bucket and training dataset are located. This is the key to preventing any issues down the line. To do the Quick Start setup, select the Quick Start setup as shown here and then hit Setup to start the domain creation process. This may take a few minutes, so hang tight. Once the domain is created, you can click on the domain settings to view domain configurations. You will see default execution role and space execution role already set up. As you scroll down further, you notice that the network configuration as well as the space configuration is also in place. Now, under the user profile, you can add users. These are the users that will be under this domain. Now let's add a user you can change the name to whatever you want, but I'll just leave it as it is here. And then I'll click Next. We configure the application and I'm fine with all the applications here present, so I'll click Next. Next, we customize the Studio UI. And I'm totally fine with all these applications and features. Of course, here, if you want to add, if you want to turn off some features, you can turn them off, but I will just leave all of them as they are right now. Click Next, and next, you review your configurations and you click Submit. Now my user has been created, as you can see here. So you can choose to launch any of these applications, but we are interested in the Studio, so we'll just click on the Studio. So yeah, this is our SageMaker Studio now up and running. And from this interface, you can, set up your Jupyter Lab. You can use MLflow if you want that. You can use your R Studio or your code editor. Now, and here are all the features you have present. Now, before we go into utilizing the standard setup, there are 2 key features of domain that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is the space management. So to run applications like Jupyter Lab or the code editor, you will need SageMaker Studio spaces. These spaces manage the resources and the storage needed to run this application. So when we create, let's say, Jupyter Lab here, we utilize some space, some EBS space or storage space, and those space will appear here. Now let's talk about the environment. This allows you to configure your domain environment. You can specify image repository for your domain users. You can utilize startup scripts here, which will run automatically when launching, let's say, your Jupyter Notebook or the code editor. This is kind of similar to using EC2 user data automation to provision an EC2 instance. You can also here attach a code repository to this domain, by clicking this button. So now let's head over back to domains and create a new domain using standard setup, which is this. This option is ideal if you want more control over your environment or need to customize specific things. Now let's click on setup to begin the domain creation process. So there are 7-step process we need to follow, but we'll kind of rush through it. So let's start with step 1, setting up your domain details. I'll call my marketing data science team as this domain. I want the login to be through IAM, and I'll click next. So in this step 2, we need to select an IAM role. You can either create a new one or choose an existing role. This gives SageMaker access to S3 and other necessary resources. For this demo, let's create a new role. You select a new role here, which is already selected for us. Notice that the ML activities section shows all the permission roles we will have. The ones already checked, like you have here, are the default permissions. If you need more, let's say you need permission to manage the pipelines, you can include that as well. Then we also need to choose the S3 bucket we want this particular domain to have access to. I'll just randomly select one here, and with that we complete the configuration for this step 2. Click on next. Here you configure the applications that you want the users of this domain to have, and I'll keep everything as it is and click next. The same here, you configure all the application as well as the features you want the users of this domain to have, and I'll have everything the same. So under the network settings, you can choose to have your resources accessible either through a VPC only or the public internet. If you prioritize security, you can choose VPC only. For this demo, I'll go with the public internet asset. I will select the default VPC in this my region, and I will select the default, and you can also just one of this subnet. Here you pick the security group. Make sure you have one created beforehand for this configuration. So I'll just go with this one, and we click next. Here you can configure the storage options. If you want to change the default space size, you can do that. If you also want to change the maximum space size, you can do that here, but I'll leave everything as it is and click next. Finally, we will review all the settings we've configured and click submit if everything looks good to create the domain. So the domain creation has commenced. Now the marketing data science domain is now up, and when you click on it, you can go to user profile, add some users like we did previously. I'll just leave everything as default. So I believe our user is being created right now, and I think we are done. So we'll go ahead and launch the SageMaker Studio. Good. So now that this SageMaker Studio is up, we can explore the studio interface. Now let's create a Jupyter Lab space. You go to create, and if you want it to be private to you only, you having access to whatever is stored here, then you go with private. If you want to share those with the users within your domain, then you click on this. I'm fine with clicking this one. You also need to give it a name. Let me just hit Tochi Lab. So now it's starting to create. It takes a while, so we'll hang in there. So I think the space is done creating, so we'll run the space. So the space is about to start, or let me put it in another word, the Jupyter Lab is about to start. So the Jupyter Lab server is now up. So now this space has been created, as you can see by this Tochi lab, and the Jupyter lab is also running, as you can see here. So I can open the Jupyter lab, and from this interface you can start your development. Once the space is created, it will appear under the space management section. I've already explained this a while ago. So feel free to explore other applications in SageMaker Studio, like the Canvas for implementing no-code machine learning or ML flow for model experimentation. Also, let me know if you want me to do an end-to-end ML development using some of these applications and some of the features mentioned here. However, in my next video, I will show you how to automate the SageMaker Studio provisioning process using Service Catalog. Please remember that SageMaker Studio is pay-as-you-go, so be sure to stop your instance, just like as I'm doing right now, when you are done, to avoid any unexpected charges. In fact, delete the domain if you can. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful tutorial. See you in the next video.